Very
This
well.
conference will now be recorded.
Division Officer from the school.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
We're from the State Department of Health, Licensure Division. We are the licensure for long-term care facilities in the state of Oklahoma. I am the Administrative Program Manager, ESPA BOWEN. I've been with the agency for going on 24 years. Most of it's been in the licensure area, not doing this type of licensure, but other licensure. We're coming here today to go give you an overview of the responsibilities of an administrator for the business you're going to be working for, what you're looking for, what you'll be doing, what you'll be submitting to us, and what we do when we receive those applications from you guys. I brought some of my staff here. I have my administrative assistant, Naomi Scott. We have 3 reviewers with us, Marjorie Bostic, Agnes O'Hara, Michael Todd, and we also have somebody who's unique and very new. Tyler does both. He does administrative and he does licensure. So he just does it for the residential care and adult daycare facilities. And Tyler's been with us since September, right? September. So they're going to give you an overview of what you need to look for and what to expect when you take your position in those areas. How many go into nursing homes? Majority of you. How about adult daycare, residential care? Assisted living, team of care. These are mostly nursing homes. So we're going to begin with Mike. Talk to you about certificate of need, which is another thing that we do in our area. It goes along with nursing home. Okay. If you guys have any questions, please hold them to the end after he's finished with the presentation, and then you can ask your questions of Mike, okay?
If you're sitting at home, we're on this section. I don't know where the camera is, but here you go, section certificate of need. How many of you guys are owners in a nursing home that you're here today? Anyone have an interest in owning a nursing home or acquiring a nursing home? Okay. What certificate of need is the pre-approval for a owner to get approved to acquire a facility, either by building a facility or acquiring an existing facility. It also has some stuff to do with if your family owns a nursing home, and you can acquire it through your family without having to go through the certificate of need process. Also, if you're in a facility and you're at 93% capacity, you can apply for an exemption to add 10 or 10% beds to your facility, either by construction or doubling beds that you already have. If the space the space meets the requirements in the building code. You can also I also work for a management company. They also have to apply for an exemption and go through a short review to manage the facility. The certificate of need is basically a pre-approval process. What we do is we look at the applicant's history, if they have any prior ownerships within the last 60 months. We also look at their performance in their survey history for 36 months. There's some discretionary denials. There's some mandatory denial stuff that's listed in the laws. So if you're helping an owner do that, go through his ownership and look at the laws to see what qualifications that might meet those. Try to explain any fines that you had in that period of time. If you're working at a facility and you're the administrator, you're going to have to sign a statement if he's a new operator with no experience or very little experience or less than 60 months. You might be part of his plan to operate the facility, and you'll provide your resumes and all this other stuff to us to review to see what your experience is to helping him run a facility, because we have to ensure resident safety. If he has over 60 months, you'll sign an affidavit that states, instead of how many hours you're going to work in the facility, it'll state that you plan on to accept employment with the new operator once he comes on. That's pretty much y'all's process in the whole certificate of need, but it's just an acquisition. You probably have some say-so in the budgets that get submitted. We'll look at a budget to see what their first month's gonna look like and what their 12-month projected budget's gonna look like. We'll also review their plan of operation. If, like I said, they have it in 60 months. We'll look at the quality care. Usually they'll put a quality care team to review stuff if they have that plan. We'll look at all that stuff. But basically, if you're building one, it's basically the same thing, except it's being built from the ground up. So if you're going to be in an intermediate care facility, we have a lot of those being built right now that are 16 beds or less. We're not going to approve, the state will not approve anyone to operate or build a new one that's above 16 beds. They don't think that's conducive to the residents, and so we're all supporting with legislation that we have in place for 16 beds or more. Someone called me the other day asking if they could have more than 16 beds. I said they could build a new facility for 16 beds, but on the same campus, but they can't put them all and house them in an environment like that anymore. That's pretty much all I have for certificate. Anybody have any questions? Psychiatric facilities also have to file a certificate if they want to expand their service or if they want to build a new psychiatric facility. That's all based on an occupancy that we take throughout the state, and there'll be a service area. That service area has to have an occupancy rate of 75% or higher. If it does, then we'll grant a certificate of need. We'll look at the budget. Everything's pretty much the same except for the occupancy plays a part in getting that. If it's an acquisition, if someone buys someone out and they have a psychiatric unit, they'll file an application. It's the same acquisition application. We'll look at all the history on that. It's a shorter review, and we'll move on with a publication, and then that's about it. But usually, if you're interested in psychiatric facilities, it's a little bigger process because you're dealing with a harder process than what it is for a nursing home. Also, nursing homes do have if you're building one, the occupancy in the service area has to be above 85%. I think statewide, we run about 50 to 55% occupancy in every service area. So more than likely, the only way a new nursing home would get built in Oklahoma is if someone acquires the facility or has a facility and wants to relocate it within 3 miles of their existing facility. If they're in the rural area, if they're in the Oklahoma City, Tulsa area, they can go 7.5 miles out from that area and build a new facility. We have people who relocate a portion of their facility and keep the old facility because there might be a need in that area for a nursing home. And this one, like I said, is at 50% capacity. You can take 50% of the beds and move them and build a new facility. Any questions? Great. All right. Have a good one.
Good morning, everyone. As Esther said, my name is Marjorie Bostic, and I've worked in public health since the late 80s. And I've been at the State Health Department since the mid-2000s. Yesterday, I was reminded of something that I want to share with each and every one of you about our agency. Our agency's mission is to promote, protect, and prevent, promote health and healthy behavior and lifestyles, to increase life expectancies. We protect our citizens by ensuring we have a safe environment. We make sure that restaurants are held accountable so that you have safe food. We also regulate and enforce laws and rules in long-term care facilities to ensure that our residents are being provided with appropriate and proper care. And we prevent disease and injury in the environment or for our citizens. And one of the ways that we do that, there are diseases that are required to be reported to the state health department, and we investigate those occurrences to ensure that it doesn't spread. We try to find out the source and prevent further spread. And I just wanted to share that with you. That's in our mission statement, and those are things that we do. Each and every one of you all that are going to be working in nursing homes, it seems like the majority of you all are going to be working in nursing homes. You're going to be charged with making sure that the residents are safe and that your staff are performing and doing their jobs to make sure that the residents are being provided with the best possible care. As Mike went over the certificate of need with you, once you are approved for ownership or management of a long-term care facility or a nursing home, you would complete an initial license, or an initial license is usually completed by the operating entity that owns that particular facility. And the first thing that we look for is an operation transfer agreement or some type of agreement or documentation to show that ownership has gone from entity A to entity B. And an initial license is issued for a period of 180 days. There are several forms that have to be completed. And a lot of times we get applications in that are signed by the administrator, and the appropriate person to sign the application once it's submitted would be a representative or an owner of the facility. You have managing members, you may have a board, depending on how that entity is set up. Those are the individuals that are responsible for signing those forms. A lot of times we get applications in that have been signed by the administrator, and we have to deem that application deficient. So we will be contacting you to let you know that an owner needs to sign that particular application. Some of the things that we look for, there are several forms that you have to fill out. We look at who owns the operations. There's a disclosure that has to be completed. We look at who owns the property. If there is a management company that is responsible for managing the operations of the facility, we want to know who that person is or who that entity is. We look at management contracts. As Mike said, you have to go through a certificate of need exemption process so we can make sure that the owner remains responsible for the operations of the facility, and that responsibility is not put directly on that particular owner. There's we call it an ODH Form 953E, which is a staffing projection. We look to make sure that you have the appropriate minimum staff that's required in the facility based on the number of residents that you have in the facility. And those are very minimum standards that we request that you have. There are federal rules that you have to abide by, as well as state rules. Another thing that we check for is with the Secretary of State, we check to see if the entity that's being licensed is registered to conduct business in the state of Oklahoma. So we verify that information. We also verify the license of all the individuals, the key individuals in the facility. We look to see if the director of nursing is licensed. We look to see if you are currently licensed, the administrator is licensed with this licensure board. We also check to be sure that the pharmacist is properly licensed and the other staff that's there that's working for the facility. If there are any changes that are being made within the facility, you all would work with plan review to ensure that you meet the physical plant requirements before those changes are made. Some facilities might want to build a smoke room, or they want to modify the kitchen, or they may want to move beds from one area to another area. So we work with plan review to make sure that those things are in order. Once you receive your initial license, during that period of time, that 180 days, our long-term care survey department comes out and they look at the facility to make sure that you all are doing the things that are required according to laws and rules. And at the end of the 180 days, you will receive a renewal license. The renewal license is in effect for a period of usually 3 years. And at that time, when you send your renewal license in, we also check to make sure that it's been signed properly by the proper person and owner of the facility. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Agnes O'Hara, and I've been with the health department for 8 years and with the state for 13 years. I'm going to discuss with you today assisted living and continuum of care facilities. Now, these are 2 facility type components. Continuum of cares encompass a nursing home component and an assisted living component, while assisted living is just a singular type facility type. The continuum of care, when there's a new owner change or new management coming in, a certificate of need will need to be filed, or a certificate of need exemption. In regards to an assisted living, if there's a change in ownership, we will need an initial license. We will need documentation regarding the transfer of operations, any closing documents, any management agreements. So that's kind of what separates. Otherwise, both when you are submitting your license application, we're looking at the grievances for the year. If any have come up, we're looking for the annual fire marshal report. If there are any violations on that report, we will be contacting you and more than likely deeming the application incomplete. We like to make sure and ensure that you cleared any violations with the fire marshal before we issue the license, just mainly for the safety of you guys and the patients that you work with. Both the continuum of care and assisted living facilities are an annual license. So the initial license portion will be 180 days after you pass survey inspections for the new owner. You will get a renewal license application, and that renewal license is good for a year. As my colleague mentioned, we are looking at the signature on the application. We are ensuring that it is not the administrator. We would need an owner, someone on the board to sign. If that is not what has occurred, we will send you an email and let you know that the application is incomplete. Any changes that occur within the facility, for instance, the resident agreements. We look at those contracts. If any change has occurred in regards to the price that you are charging residents that come in, we want to know, send those in, we review those, and we will send you back a letter letting you know whether or not it has been accepted. Also, if there are any changes within the facility, whether it be administrator, nurse, RN, pharmacist, we want to know. On our website, we provide a notice of change. Please provide that because, as my colleague mentioned, we do check out and ensure that everyone is properly licensed. And again, our records are open records. So if anytime there's a subpoena or the public wishes to have information on the facility that you'll be at, we'll be providing what we have. So it's very important that you provide to us all current information. So if an email changes for the contact person, again, if you are no longer with the facility, please let us know. Because again, if something goes on with that facility and it comes under fire and you haven't let us know that you have left, your name is still tied to that. So you don't want to have to try and defend and prove and put yourself out there and possibly mess up your reputation in your field trying to discount something that could have been changed from the get-go. Because when you guys let us know about the changes, we update our system. So again, if anything is subpoenaed or requested, we are providing them what we have. So it's very important for you and your job and your future career to let us know of any changes that are going on at your facility. Also, again, with any management agreements, any type of change that's come up within the facility, let us know. If you have a question as to if you feel, whether or not you should tell us or not, email, go onto our website, check and see, ask questions. Because when you don't ask questions and you don't let us know and you don't follow through, that's when problems can arise. My colleague did mention we are checking the administrator's licenses. At times, we do see the OTC information on there, which basically is saying that you may not have paid your taxes. When you don't pay your taxes, that appears on that website, on the ASOCA website, and that can affect your license. They'll usually say this person's license will not expire until December 2021, but if you don't pay your taxes by that time, you won't get to renew it. And sometimes that can be an alert for us as well, especially if an owner is submitting your name and we see that, that might be cause for us to get in touch with them and let them know what we see. So again, it's just very important. I understand you guys are going to various places. You might be exploring different things within your careers. The number one thing I can honestly tell you is to keep the State Health Department informed. There are lots of forms. We have them all posted on our website. Again, if you have a question as to what you need to fill out, or you don't know where to go, or you have a question about something, maybe the owner has come to you and they want answers on something, feel free to give us a call and we'll guide you or we'll provide you where to best get your answers. So that's all I have right now. Any questions? Okay.
Tyler started back in September, and he has been charged with reviewing adult daycare license applications, as well as residential care facility applications. And yeah.
Good morning, everyone. So as a part of my job, my official title is Administrative Assistant 1. So what I do in my position is that not only do I conduct many of the administrative tasks that keep our office running, but I also am in tasked with working with license renewals for adult daycare and residential care facilities. With renewals, at least starting with adult daycare, they have to be renewed annually. So, and when we look at a license renewal application, we use a checklist. So we make sure that everything is, whatever needs to be checked off, needs to be checked off. So at least item number 1 for renewing adult daycare license applications is that it has to be filed 45 days before the expiration date. It has to be received by our office so that we can conduct the renewal and get any information out, or at least get the renewal conducted, see what we're missing, and then get back to you and have all the information needed so that we can renew the license by the time the license is expired, so that we can have your license renewed. It is required that you have a $75, that you pay $75 and have it receipted to the department for us to conduct the renewal as well. And if you're an individual who's running the facility and you're not an incorporation, like it's not a licensed limited liability corporation or an incorporation of any kind, and is run by an individual, you are required to provide a Form 301 affidavit of lawful presence to show that it's an individual person, not just an incorporation that's running the facility. You will also be required to do a application form, ODH form 712, and make sure that it's signed by the person, or at least by the operating entity, and make sure that it is formally notarized. We have had issues like Ms. Bostic and Ms. O'Farrell have mentioned, where people that have signed applications are not the person that we have listed in our state licensure database as a owner of the entity. So it's pertinent to have either permission to sign that application, or from the board, your board members, or be the owner of that entity. We also require that you have a 953B submitted, signed, and notarized as well, and or ownership info, which is a 953C and D. You are required to submit that if you have changes in your ownership, if you have a change in board members, or you acquire a board member, or executive directors change if you're a nonprofit entity, for an example. You are required to submit a 953C and D, signed, dated, and notarized, to show that, so that we can update our system and show that this is the person who's authorized to sign the application, and this is who are the deciding factors in running the facility itself. You also need to be an active entity with the Secretary of State, like Ms. O'Hara mentioned. We have had, in conducting renewals, we have to make sure that the entity, if it's an incorporation, of course, is active. We have had issues where entities have sent in their verification, but it's inactive. So we often have to let them know, either via email or physical letter, to let them know to contact the Secretary of State to get their facility reenacted and up to date. Another thing, or a couple more things, are the financial statements for your facility. You are required to submit a budget or financial statements from the last 12 months of your operation to show where you're at in terms of what you're spending on your entity, what you're spending on the people that visit this adult daycare facility, who come in for your services to receive them. It is required that you have we know what how much money is coming in, how much money is coming out, and where it's going to provide insight on how the participants for that facility are getting the services that they need. Lastly, or not lastly, but the director as well. So the director would be the administrator, right? The director also could be the administrator for the facility, could be the administrator. So it's pertinent that you are licensed. We do verify through Osbelka that you are that you are licensed and up to date in the state of Oklahoma to run a adult daycare facility as well. Like my colleagues have said, we also ensure that they are up to date, even if you if we do see an issue, like, for example, if you're not compliant with the Oklahoma Tax Commission, we make a note of that to put in your incomplete to make sure that you contact, or you have to ensure contact to make sure you keep up to date on your taxes so that you can be able to maintain your license and will continue to file. That's about it. All right, so that's for adult daycare facilities. So, and now I move on to residential care facilities. Now, residential care facility renewals are a lot more detailed than adult daycares. There's a lot more involved, and for people who are live-in individuals living in this facility, to ensure that they are properly cared for and to know that they have various resources to their disposal for their needs. So for renewal, of course, you have the fee for renewal is $50 and or plus another 20, 50 and 20. $20 for modifications, but $50 for a general renewal fee. And we renew residential care facilities every 2 years. And with that, you are required to have Form 728 signed and notarized by the necessary parties. Make sure that it's the person who's operating the entity that is on record with us, and to ensure that we know. And if it's not, what we do with renewals, when we see that somebody has signed the documents that are not in our records, we have them produce, even though it's not required, a Form 953 B or C to ensure that our records are updated and that we know that they have permission. We look for, make sure that the board gives them permission to sign the documents for both this renewal and future renewals afterwards. As well, it's not, again, this Form 953 is not required, but a lot of facilities provide us with this because that form provides us information on the physician, the pharmacist, the dietitian, and the nurse agreement as well. What a lot of administrators will do when they submit the 953E is that they will provide us with information on those 4 people that are contracted with the facility to provide care for the residents. And with that, that leads me into the next part. You are required to also have a signed agreement with a physician, a licensed physician in the state of Oklahoma, so to ensure that they are the ones who are caring for the residents and providing them with the medical care they need. The same goes with a pharmacist or registered nurse. It can be either or. Most facilities will do both, to make sure that residents have the proper medications, as well as registered nurse can provide on-site care for those individuals. And registered dietitian is required if your residents have special diets. So if you have a resident, even if you have one resident or one resident who requires special diets, it's pertinent that you have a contract or you have an agreement with a registered provisional dietitian to make sure that that resident or multiple residents meet their dietary needs to encourage their longevity. It's also required that you have a fire marshal inspection and that it is most current. We've had renewals received where the license or where the fire marshal inspection is either outdated, or if it's submitted, there are some violations that need to be corrected. And that is usually included within our incomplete letters and or emails that we send to the administrator or to the contact person for the entity to let them know to correct the issues that they have in their fire marshal inspection and or get an updated inspection from that county's fire marshal for their facility to ensure that the building is structurally sound, and that in the event of a catastrophic period where you need to get people out, or you need to, such as a fire or a natural disaster such as like in Oklahoma, floods, tornadoes, blizzards, earthquakes, whatever, we seem to have everything now. That you are up to date and that you can have proper exit strategies on how to get your residents out of those facilities properly and in a timely manner to prevent from having any fatalities or injuries. Now the next item is Secretary of State. Like the adult daycare, like the res cares, like the adult daycare, nursing homes, and assisted livings, the entity is to be current and up to date with the Secretary of State. Much like the issues we've discussed, we have to make sure that the entity is up to date, that they are not either suspended or inactive or any other, pretty much it. So suspended and or inactive, we want to make sure to if there is that event, we have to let the entity know that you need to contact the Secretary of State to get yourself updated so that you can continue to exist as a registered entity with the state of Oklahoma. The administrator is required to be licensed for the facility, as with all the other facilities, that they are required to be up to date with their license. Same issue if the administrator is either out of date, outdated, or they have issues with its OTC. That is noted that needs to be resolved in order for them to continue on with their license. Made a note to OSBELCA to make sure that they are up to date with their taxes so that you guys can continue to have your license, or be sure to keep just updated with your license period. The next items are the electrician and the plumber inspections. Now, these inspections are for the facility itself to make sure that the lights stay on properly and that the water is running properly, so that your residents have be able to have their electricity as well as proper plumbing and not have any issues. So we require that annually, so that facilities are required to go and seek the aid from a plumber and electrician to get a gauge, or at least have the facility inspected to make sure that everything works. All the lights work, all the electricity is working properly, the plumbing is working properly, the toilets are flushing properly. There's no brown water coming out of the faucet, things of that nature, to ensure that residents have clean water, adequate electricity, not only for light, but for their cooking utensils, if they have kitchens, or if they have machines that they have to use to survive, essentially. It is required that you keep those things updated annually. And with all of these, we verify everything, including the electrician and the plumber. The electrician and plumber we verify them through the Construction Industries Board. The registered dietitian, we register through the OMB section, the provisional dietitian section of the OMB. Pharmacist and or registered nurse, we go through the Board of Pharmacy and the Board of Nursing to make sure that they are both up to date with their license. Same with the physician. Much like my colleagues here, we verify every individual that has a contract with the facility to ensure that they are updated and that they have a facility, where else we make notation to the facility to say, make sure that to find a person who is up to date on their license and has no issues on their licensing, and is completely clear of any issues that they may have and is completely up to date. Next part. We also check if there is a current manager on file through our state licensure database. We compare what we have in our renewal license applications to what we have in our state licensure database. This goes back to the issue of somebody signing a resident, like for example, in a res care, I have had a renewal where the executive director had signed it, but we did not have him on record. What we were not notified of was that the entity went from a for-profit to a nonprofit. and that the person signing it had become the executive director. And with that, we had them produce the 953C and D and have them give us authorization, have them provide authorization from the board to say that they were authorized to sign renewal applications from that certain period, that certain renewal onwards, and so on and so forth. So it is required. So just if there are changes in management and changes with that, do submit before you even do a renewal, maybe submit an ODH Form 958 notice of change to ensure that we are up to date in our records with current manager, current board members, and everything else, so that we can update that in our state licensure database, as well as our Aspen Central Office federal database. As well as administrative penalties and payments must be current. So any penalties or any payments that you may have or may have had, and we check this in both state licensure database and federal database in ACO. We look to see that you are kept up to date and current with administrative penalties and payments, as well as any actions and a cleared survey from our long-term care division. They are the ones who go out to survey your facilities to make sure that you are up to date, that there are no deficiencies cited and no deficient practices that have been cited. And we look to see that everything, if there have been deficient practices in the past, that they are clear. So we check that, and of course we make sure to, once we have that all taken care of, then we in turn update the effective dates of your license and the date that it was issued. And typically we will put that into our state and federal systems, and that will, and in turn you will get your license. Now, not so good sign, I guess we can talk about people who send for example, if I were to complete an evaluation of a res care or an adult daycare, and I send an incomplete letter or email, and I don't get something, if I don't get a response back in 30 days, we do send an opportunity to show compliance to let you know the department has not heard from you, and we provide the dates, provide kind of a case management in a way where we show the dates of when we attempted to contact the facility. And with that, we send an opportunity to show compliance letter to let you know you have 10 days to provide us this information, or else we send you a notice of violation. And in that period, once we send the notice of violation, it goes to our legal department. And that will in turn jeopardize the licensing for the facility itself and or the individuals running the entity, and there may possibly be an investigation and fines. So it is important that once we reach out to you, that you always respond back to us with any comments, questions, or concerns that we have brought up, and that we can get your license out in an efficient manner, and that we can continue on to not only work with other individuals, but work with you to make sure that you're up to date and that you can get your license to conduct to care for your residents as well as participants of your facility. I think that could be. Thank you much.
And just remember, we're not just doing this for the residents. Residents are very important. But again, for your career and your reputation, it's very important that you let us know, because we have had some crazy situations where we've gone in and residents are laying on beds, wrapped up in duct tape, windows busted out. We've had situations where I had one residential care where the owner was spending one of the residents' money, and the sheriff, the FBI, everybody had to come in. Just imagine if you're working in a facility, you don't know what the owner is doing, and you get caught up in that. And that was on the news. And all of her facilities had to be shut down. how do you go from that and try and get references for your next job? So it's very important that you keep us abreast of what's going on, of any changes, so you too don't get tied up in anything you didn't start.
That brings up a good point. Thank you so much. Be sure that you're communicating with the rest of your staff, and be sure to be communicating with the operating entities in your facility to know what is going on, what changes are being made, what issues are being brought up, so that and then in turn, if issues are being brought up, that would be, please let us know, or any changes that are being made, please let us know as soon as possible so that we can keep you up to date, because it will, if not, penalties and investigations can occur, and there could be losses of licenses and or criminal penalties that could include serious jail time and serious fines. So please keep those things in mind while you are operating your facilities or you're having to do the operations of the facility. Any questions? Thank you much.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Marjorie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Naomi Scott. I am the administrative assistant to Espanola BOWEN. My support staff, two of them are not here. We provide technical and administrative support to the planning specialist and to Ms. Espa. Our job is to catch everything on the front end. So when you guys are submitting your initial license, your license renewal, we're the ones who are receiving it, we're logging it, we're scanning it, and we're submitting it over to the planning specialist for further review. We issue out an assurance letter confirming that we did receive your license renewal or your initial license. For some of you that are going to be the operators, what you can do is use those assurance letters as a temporary license until a decision is made on your license renewal or your application. It will serve as just a Band-Aid, but continue to follow up. Also, when you're submitting, I'm sorry, on that, what she said, it does serve as a continuation of your license, but you have to have filed it timely in order for that letter to be active for that reason. So when you receive that letter, it'll say exceptions in there that you have filed on and filed it timely, and that your license will continue until you get the new one in place. Okay, but it's only if you filed it timely. Okay, now because of COVID right now, we've been a little bit lenient with that, but just know most of the time, if you file it timely, your license will continue until we get it processed and in place. And then, thank you, Leslie. And there's a disclaimer in there, and it has the statutes and everything that you can also look at. Okay, so when you guys submit over your notice of changes to change administrators or the RN, what we are seeing, and this is, we're trying to get it corrected, but you guys, well, the applicant submitting the notice of change, they'll submit that they are their current administrator, and it will not have the previous administrator's name, the date that they started, or their end date. It's also missing the email address, the telephone number. What happens is that if you cannot provide that information to us, the system will not allow us to enter you into our ACO database as the new administrator, because those dates are missing. We have no way of notifying you if you do not provide your email address. If we're sending an email over to the owner of the facility, or we're sending an email to the previous administrator, which will not respond back to us, then you're not the administrator of record. And if you call and follow up and say, hey, I submitted this, we did send you an email or try to correspond with you through mail. And if you don't receive that back, your application will not be processed. So it's very imperative that you leave us a proper contact telephone number and an email address so we can email you that assurance letter or a question on the date that the previous administrator had left. When you're submitting over your, we spoke briefly, when you're submitting over your initial license or your license renewals, we are having, well, our finance department just moved over. So what's happening is you send over a payment for your facility and you don't reference the facility's name or the license number. We have no way of knowing or how to apply your payment in what facility, because you could be an operator of 7 facilities, but we would not know how to apply that payment if you do not tell us who or which facility it belongs to. So again, it will delay the processing of your application, and it's like chasing a rabbit down a hole if we do not have a proper email address, telephone number, or a contact number, or a secondary contact number to get a hold of the person who's submitting the application via email or mail or telephone call. So then we get a lot of inquiries on our HRDS email or health facilities email asking where is your license renewal and what is the status of, where's your license renewal, or when was it mailed? We can't answer that because we don't know when you sent your payment in or what facility you're referencing. So be sure that you double check everything that you're submitting to us before you submit the application or before you inquire. When you send over your email inquiry, make sure you reference the facility and the facility number, so that way we can go directly to it instead of responding back, which facility are you talking about? Because we wouldn't know. I think that's all what we do, and that sums up. I'm gonna give it back to Ms. Espa.
No, there's a lot of information for you guys to grasp this early in the morning. But license is very important. It's a very important part of your job that you'll be doing. With that, Naomi talked about, just here at the end, talked about when you're submitting your application stuff in and the checks that we receive. It's very important as an administrator, if you guys are going over those documents before they're submitted to us, make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and make sure that the application has the application name and number on there, facility number. If you don't know what it is, you have a license out there. On that license that's posted in your facility will be the license number on there of that facility and the name. It'll have the entity name, it'll have the facility name. So in doubt, look at your license up there. Make sure you have that information. Any questions? Just make sure you document, make sure you submit a notice of change if there's a change in the phone number, fax number, address, and a nurse, BOWEN, if any of that changes, please submit it into us. That covers you, and it covers the facility. Thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.